welcome to a presentation from the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. My name is Ann DeSantis, and I have an amazing guest on this show. I have Marek Rudak. He is a Catholic husband, he is an author, and he is a coach. So welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for hosting me. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm just amazed by all the things that you're doing. I mean, you're a director of a nonprofit, you're a podcast host, and have a lot of different shows. You wear a lot of different hats, so it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, it's great to be here as we are with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation. And for people who know us, we're all about helping families in crisis, and especially families and individuals affected by divorce and separation. And with that, I just want to start out by telling our audience here that Marek also is a person who has been affected by divorce. He is a divorced and an old Catholic and now remarried again. So I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your story, because what you're doing now is you're taking all that you've learned and ingested over the years and also your faith and bringing it forth. And I want to invite people also to check out your website at marekrudak.com. That's MarekRudak.com. So please tell us your story.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you. And so, based on my accent and my name, it's you can probably guess that I wasn't born in the United States. I was actually born in Poland. And I was born in the 80s. And so actually the first 10 years of my life was under communism. So it was a very unique perspective. We definitely never starved or anything like that, but things were a lot different. There was like a lot less choices, and there was a lot less freedoms, and definitely a lot less colors. And obviously there's much I can talk about that. But kind of, the kind of the danger of telling my story is there's a lot of different things I can talk about. But I think that what I'll try to focus on is what led me up to my divorce and the lessons from it. And so from the divorce perspective, from that lesson, the household that I grew up in was very much Catholic. Back then in Poland, everybody I knew was Catholic, and everybody went to church. But the problem with the Catholicism that I experienced, it was very ritualistic Catholicism. So in other words, we went to mass, we did our offerings, we got our blessings, but it was like something that we did. And I never really understood why we do it. It's just because everyone around me did exactly the same thing. I just never really thought much about it. And so I never really developed an emotional connection with my faith. Yes, I knew intellectually the Stations of the Cross, the Ten Commandments, the things that you need to know. I knew it intellectually, but I never established an emotional connection. And then another thing that really prevented me from establishing an emotional connection is I never had a good father figure. My dad didn't live with us, and so unfortunately this day and age, it's fairly common. Back then in communist Poland as well, it wasn't heard of that your dad didn't live with you, and so my dad was absent, and my father figure was a very abusive grandfather, very abusive, very harsh man. And in fact, to this day, the only time I remember him complimenting me was when he was drunk, and I grew up with this lack of confidence and this strong desire for validation that I never got from my childhood home. So what did I do? I looked for that on the outside, in the outside world. And, initially it wasn't anything bad per se. For example, I focused on getting good grades at school. I always did pretty well at school. One thing that really changed my life trajectory and what brought me to the United States was that my dad passed away when I was 10. And, unfortunately, the sad thing is that I didn't really grieve after my father because I didn't really know him. So it was a very tragic situation from many standpoints, obviously losing dad at such a young age, but also losing somebody that I quite never knew. And then what happened was when I was 13, my mom remarried, she moved to the United States. And then when I was 14, I joined her and I went to high school in United States, Alameda, California, a Catholic high school. I was super blessed that I was able to get not only great education, but also a Catholic education. Obviously at the time, I didn't really much value it. I was like, okay, that's kind of the taxation with that representation. This is what I gotta do in order to get my good education, go to these religion classes and memorize these things, okay, got it. And so I did very well in high school. I graduated top 10%, top 10% of my class. And, you know, for a lot of different reasons, which we probably don't have a lot of time to get into, I ended up applying to West Point. And to my surprise, I actually got accepted. And, you know, there's a lot of things that I would have done differently in my life, but one thing that I would have not changed is I still would have went to West Point and still would have served. Except the reason why I went to West Point wasn't the most pure of the reasons, you know, like kind of looking back and knowing, you know, now really what I was looking for validation, kind of going back to that theme that I never got that validation from my father. I didn't have like a good role model to put that validation in context. I thought that, hey, I saw these military guys on the movies wearing uniform, be all confident. And I thought to myself, man, that's what I want to be. I want to be that confident person that everybody looks up to, because my grandfather destroyed that image of me. And so that was really the main driver that got me to West Point. And at West Point, I did very well. I also graduated top 10% of my class. After West Point, I went to Ranger School, like another kind of like a manly thing. I thought like, hey, you know, once I get that tab on my uniform, then I'll definitely feel manly. And so I just kept doing these things. They were not necessarily a bad thing, but I did them for the wrong reasons. I did them because I felt that, hey, once I graduate from West Point, once I get that Ranger tab, once I go to combat, once I get these medals, then I'll prove my masculinity, and all that doubt, all those fears that I did a great job of hiding will go away. But they didn't. You know, that's not how it works. But at the time, I didn't know any better, and so I kept doing it. And unfortunately, another set of validation along that journey was my marriage. You know, and I know it sounds really stupid looking back at it now, but you know, I just at the time it's like you don't know what you don't know, and so to me, I felt like, hey, this is the next thing for me to do. You know, I went to work twice. I got a great job, so now it's time for me to marry. And unfortunately, I think that really factored into the decisions that my mom passed away from cancer. And I just, you know, even though I never really had a deep connection with my mom, I mean, my mom, like she was an amazing person. I just didn't really have a good relationship because in a way, unfortunately, I blamed her for all these things that happened in my house. You know, to me, it was just like, there was a reminder of the things that happened in my house. And we never really had that kind of a conversation, what happened. And so that's something that was always in the background. And so when my mom passed away, that was like the only person that I really had any kind of relationship with. And so I felt incredibly lonely. And also at the time I was facing a deployment to Afghanistan. And unfortunately, you know, to me, marriage was a way to have somebody in my life, having that kind of like a mother figure, somebody that, you know, that looks out for you. And, you know, I was kind of like, you know, looking back at it, I was looking at it more like, hey, this is something that will make you feel better, you know, and that's the idea that I went into marriage with. And so, for example, you know, going back to Catholicism, I only wanted to have a civilian wedding because to me, you know, at the time, Catholicism was just like a nice thing to do, something for like, you know, for your parents or whatnot, not something that was really important to me. So we just got a civilian wedding before I went to Afghanistan. But 2 years down the road, my ex-wife's mother insisted of us having a Catholic wedding because, you know, in Poland, Catholicism is still very influential. And so to her, it didn't compute that, you know, a couple didn't have a Catholic wedding. So, you know, in a way, I got forced into it, and I did it because I thought, okay, like, well, let's just do it to make it happy. And so what I'm trying to get at is that I didn't really enter marriage understanding what marriage is about. I entered marriage because I wanted the perks of marriage, and I felt that this is something that I need to do versus something that I need to invest in. And so another thing that really shook me up along that journey is that once I left the service, I started working for ExxonMobil, and the thing about ExxonMobil at the time, there was a lot of opportunities for international travel. At that time, I didn't, you know, the cracks in our marriage started appearing. You know, we never really had that good, solid foundation. So, you know, at first in the infatuation phase, everything's happy. You know, you think love will find a way, but the more we were together, the more I felt unhappy in my marriage. And so, like, one way of dealing with it, unfortunately, and you know, it sounds really stupid at the time, I mean, like, sounds really stupid looking back, from the perspective of times, but one way of me dealing with that unhappiness in marriage was volunteering for business trips, because I thought that, hey, it's marriage. I mean, that's what you see on TV. So I just gotta suck it up. In time, she'll be thankful for this extra money that I've made on these business trips. But unfortunately, during one of those business trips, I didn't find out till later, my ex-wife had an affair with her boss at her work. And that literally almost killed me, because I knew that I didn't have a good marriage, but I thought that I could always trust her, and to me, like, when I found out that she was cheating on me, it's like the time stopped. It's like everything I knew about life all of a sudden became unreal. Like I just couldn't even process it. I just couldn't accept. It took me like literally like a few hours just to even comprehend that this is something that was possible. And that really crushed me. That really was a very painful time for me. But looking back from the perspective of time, it was exactly what I needed to really start that walk back to Christ, to figure out what's important. And so along that journey, I realized that there were a lot of things that I was doing that were not honoring God, and I was doing things for the selfishness. Even though at the surface level, these accomplishments looked good and appeared to be noble, but I realized that I was doing them really for myself. I wasn't honoring God. I didn't put God at the center, and because of that, I really focused on validation, which only lasts for so long. And so, obviously, it wasn't a short journey. It was definitely a lot of pains to it, but it slowly brought me back to Christ. So, for example, I started to pray more. I started to actually understand the church's teachings. I started actually to understand the reasons behind the teachings, and that slowly brought me back to faith. And one major milestone along that journey that you mentioned, and is the annulment process. And at first, I was like, annulment process? She cheated on me. Why am I even doing this? But then through the annulment process, I realized that cheating is not the basis for the annulment. It made me realize that I was really not ready to be married. I didn't understand what marriage is. To me, marriage was just something that you do, and it's not something that is meant to honor God, and it's supposed to be the foundation of my life, of something that brings us to sanctity together. And so that's why I, as painful as the process was, because it took about 2 years, and it actually went over to UK. And obviously, there's a long story behind that, and there was about 3 or 4 times along that journey where I was like, man, screw this thing. Why am I even bothering this? I'm never going to get married anyways. But I'm glad I persevered, because it was a very humbling experience that made me realize, after answering those 150 questions, just how unprepared for marriage I was. But it also gave me an opportunity to do it right. And so, like, one of them, the main things that I did differently was actually following through on theology of the body in my second marriage, because one of the things that kept me from Catholicism was like, the teaching on sex. And I was like, man, that's nice and dandy, but it's not for me. I don't know who's actually able to do it. And it started with some baby steps. For example, one of those baby steps was, quitting pornography. And another one was like understanding like why you want to do it, or like what's the purpose behind the teaching. It's not only to deny your pleasure, but it's actually to help you understand, help you discern whether that marriage, that relationship is based on love for who you are, rather than who that person is doing for you. And so just to give you an example for it, as I look back at all of my relationships, to include my ex-wife, if sex was not part of the deal, all those relationships would have ended a whole lot sooner. That's because I was infatuated with this woman, and I thought that this infatuation meant love. But if that's your definition of love, it's only a matter of time till it runs out. I mean, look at all these celebrities. I mean, some of these very super attractive women, you found out that their husbands cheat on them. You're like, how is that possible? They're dating the most beautiful woman in the world. But that again, if that's your definition of love, infatuation and essentially lust, that only lasts for so long. And so the blessing is that as painful as my divorce was, I was very blessed to be able to learn from it, make adjustments, And that really set me up for my marriage with Jessie, which is by far the biggest accomplishment of my life. And it, and I really enjoy sharing my story because not to brag, but to really make the point that, this is not just theoretical, because sometimes I think when you hear about these teachings, it's people that were like in that career field all their life. So for them, it's not a big deal because they were born into it, they're living it. And a lot of times it seems like, hey, if you weren't in that circle, then it's not going to happen to you. But the fact of the matter is that yes, it's hard, it takes work, but it's so worth it because it will result in love that that is just unimaginable, and it results in love that will make all the difference in your life.
Yeah, you have an amazing story. And I know there's a whole lot more than just what you shared. So that's why I would love to invite people to connect with you on your website at marekrudak.com. You see his picture there, that the book is called The Love Driven Man. I actually own the book. It's available on Amazon and also on Kindle as well. And it's a wonderful book for the man in your life, right? I mean, I think it's whoever's watching this, whether you yourself or for your husband or someone else that you can give this book to. It's just a wonderful one. So now I wondered if you could talk about what's going on with you regarding your ministry.
Yeah, sure.
I'd love for people to hear about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I kind of have two careers, if you will. So like one side of my career, I do executive coaching. I work with executives in companies like Pinterest, Yelp, New York Times, Bloomberg. And, it's basically what happens is that some people have some career questions like, hey, getting ready for promotion or managing conflict. So I do that in my kind of secular career field, if you will. Kind of going back to that analogy of Paul, not that I'm comparing myself to St. Paul, but St. Paul did the tent making. So executive coaching is my tent making, if you will. So that's my secular career. And then in my ministry, what I'm focusing on is men, and helping them understand how their wounds, how not having that, essentially having that male role model is affecting their choices. And the reason why I focus on men is because I feel that, and again, this is on average, I think that women are a lot better about reaching out for help. They're natural connectors. They're a lot better at identifying how things are not working and reaching out help. Whereas I think with men, unfortunately, even in this day and age, admitting that you're not good at something is considered weakness. And the ironic thing is that I used to believe the same thing, but when I look at the biggest the best leaders in my life, the ones that actually like made an impact on my life, not the ones that achieved the result and crushed many people in the process, I'm talking about the ones that achieve results and build and actually lifted up people with them, are the ones who are vulnerable, are the ones who are open, are the ones that are not afraid to identify where they're short, and then identify people that can help them overcome these things. And so in my ministry space, I help men understand what it is that's holding them back from the heart perspective. Kind of going back to the theme of the book, the Love Driven Man, is that choice between control and love. And what I found is that on average, men tend to make a lot more choices that are either controlling themselves or their image to other people. But that comes at a price, because it's not really who God made them to be. And it's typically dictated by the wounds. And so when men are able to identify the wounds, whether that be pornography, whether that be a series of sexual relationships, or maybe just being angry or being abusive sometimes, or maybe not having good relationships, or whatever that may be, once they heal that, once they understand how those wounds are affecting their relationships, it opens up to love and helps them to flourish and become the kind of man that everyone wants to follow.
Yeah, that's great advice. And you've lived it. You really have. And you're still living it, right? I mean, you're still day by day, you're still learning more, and you're trying to pass on what you learn to others through your writing and through the coaching that you're doing. Now, before this video started, we were talking about the fact that people can make a consultation with you. Tell us how they can do that. And I can also post it as well. But what would they do?
Sure. So obviously, this thing is through a Calendly link. What I'll do is I'll send you the email so you can post it with the show notes. But if all else fails, just go to my website, marekrudak.com, and there will be a link for a Calendly consultation. That website is more catered towards career coaching, executive coaching. But if you are looking for direction from the Catholic standpoint, no worries, just book an appointment and we can figure out, what is that best course of action, whether that's working with me or me referring to somebody else that's better suited for you.
Yeah, that's amazing. You have some great things that are happening. Maybe you could tell us in the future, say this year, 2021, is there anything else that they should look out for that you'll be doing?
Sure. So one of the things I've done is I did this series on servant leadership for heroic men. So maybe we can include those links on there. It's totally free. And actually, I was just talking to Charbel from Perugia this morning. So he's going to feature it on perugiamedia.com. So we got United States cover because, heroic men, it's all around the world, but it's mostly focused on North America. And then obviously Perugia being in Australia. So they featured my videos on servant leadership, and also I've done some videos on things like how mercy helped me to quit porn. So if you're struggling with porn, please check it out. Also how to grow from divorce. I also did one on suffering, how to deal with suffering based on Saint Faustina's diary, and also for the folks who maybe didn't go through divorce or had went through divorce, but are right now looking, feeling they're overdue for a soulmate. Also done a video to give people these tangible steps about what they can do to help them get themselves ready for the soulmate. And so like in all these videos, all my content, what I try to focus on is the practical steps, because that's really what coaching is taking those practical steps, which maybe from day to day don't seem like much, but just like the compound interest over time grow into something significant. And when you get there, like for example, with my wife, I remember, from my divorce to actually when my wife was 7 years, and the whole time I felt like, man, God, I'm doing all these things. Why am I experiencing so much relationship misery? Now, obviously, there were still some things that I need to fix, but it gets hard. It gets hard because when we follow the Lord, things are happening, but typically they don't happen on our timeline, and so. What I really focus on my coaching practice and my content is help you flourish in that time and help you put that time in perspective. So that way, when you get to that milestone, you realize, hey, this is actually something better, or hey, yes, it took longer, but thank God that I got there, because now that I got there, I actually have the skills to be able to maintain it.
Yeah, I know you're all about skills, and that's why I think you're a very good person for our audience to get in touch with, especially the men, right? To get in touch with you at marekrudak.com. Any final words before we end?
No, well, thank you guys so much for listening to my story. I know it's like that. I kind of give you the quick digest version, and hopefully it wasn't too much rambling. But also, like if you are interested in my story, check out The Love Driven Man. It's much of it talks about my story, but it's not so much about talking about me. Just like what I found helpful, especially in my time in the military, is give people an example. And then when people see an example, it's a lot easier for folks to understand the principles and how they can apply it to their lives. And so if you check out The Love Driven Man, it's not only available on Kindle or paperback, but it's also available on Audible, because I found that a lot of men, there's a good number of men who prefer to listen to things. And also I know that folks are busy, so you can also listen to the book on the ride to work or wherever. And so it's very to the point, and it's very the content is meant to help you take action. And so whether you're a reader or an e-reader or an Audible person, please check it out. I think that it's going to make a big difference in your life.
Amen. Thanks for letting me know too that it's on Audible, because I am an Audible person. I love Audible.
Okay.
So yeah, thanks again. So God bless you, Marek, and we'll see you all next time here with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. Learn about us at nonnatus.org, and be sure to schedule your free spiritual consultation appointment with us with one of our Mercedarian friars. God bless.
God bless.